Hello, and welcome to our presentation on the Kenya framework for the onshore and marine hydrocarbon escape prevention, preparedness, and response capacity. I'd like to acknowledge my co-authors, Jose Rios with REMS, and Stella Maris Muthik and Michael Mbaro, both with the Kenya Maritime Authority. I'd also like to recognize that we have contributions on this undertaking from HSE International, Focus Wildlife, Owens Coastal Consultants, and RPS ASA. Kenya transitioned in the past few years from being a strictly oil importer to being a crude oil producer and exporter. During this transition, the World Bank's International Development Assistance Program recognized the relevance and importance of enhancing the preparedness and response capability. And through the Kenya Ministry of Petroleum and Mining, initiated steps to enhance development of the national framework for onshore and offshore oil spill prevention, preparedness, and response capabilities. The overall objective of the Kenya Petroleum Technical Assistance Project, or KEPTAP, is to strengthen the prevention, preparedness, and coordinated emergency response in Kenya in the event of an oil spill in terrestrial, aquatic, or marine environments. The project was built around 4 phases. The first phase was to undertake an assessment of the existing gaps and strengths in place at the time that the project started. So it looked at programs that were already in place, including a draft of the National Contingency Plan, to identify priority areas and areas for further development. The second phase was really developing then the national plans and supporting guidelines that could be used as tools to support those national plans. The third phase was an implementation phase. This consisted of workshops and a series of recommendations made specifically with respect to equipment, resources, logistical support that might be required in place, and training and exercises. And then the fourth phase was to look at the program in context of its neighbors and the international and regional context. So this was really to help Kenya establish mechanisms and recommendations for improving and strengthening the ties in a regional basis. All of this was undertaken in concert with the technical committee for Kenya and importantly, a national group of stakeholders or a forum that worked to develop and review the materials that were prepared as part of this process. The key 4 deliverables for the project consisted of the 2 national plans, one for inland and one for the offshore, and then 2 guidance manuals, one for shoreline cleanup assessment technique, or SCAT, and the other one around oiled wildlife. And we'll talk about these a little bit later. Our first step was really to look then at what the assessment was in 2018, where things stood and where improvements could be made. And for this, we based our analysis really on the tool that is used in many international settings to assess spill response program preparedness, and that is the RPEL, Oil Spill Response Planning and Readiness Assessment Tool, or RETOS. We use this tool to then analyze at a level A, the basic level, what the program looked like on a national basis. And from that result, the results from the analysis showed that overall the country at a level A nationally had a preparedness of approximately 30% using this international series of criteria. So there are plenty of opportunities for improvements in all the categories that are identified within the RETOS program. So that's really lays the groundwork for the effort that was then undertaken as part of the phases 2, 3, and 4. So as a first step in all of this is to look at development of the national contingency plans. And for that is to make sure that these plans consider existing legislation and regulations and those that are in process or in the process of being reviewed and proposed and being adopted. And in that context, then we ended up with the two national contingency plans. These two plans are very much aligned with one another. The difference being that the plan holders, those responsible for these plans, are two different and distinct agencies. One, the Kenya Maritime Authority, is the plan owner for the offshore plan, and then the National Environment Management Authority is responsible for the onshore plan. The structure of these national contingency plans follows the 2018 IMO, International Maritime Organization, guidance for national oil spill contingency plans, and really sets the foundation for the key elements and best practices that are incorporated in both of these plans. There are 11 overall sections within the plans, including introductions, initial response, notifications, reportings, a recognition of what the risk response hazards are, a response management organization, and so on. Furthermore, there are 10 appendices for each of these plans, which include a lot of the information that will be necessary to either update frequently, such as contacts or equipment, safety data sheets, and also guidance on other aspects of the response, such as guidance for facilities and for local plans, or guidance on risk assessment and risk assessment tools. But the two plans, both for offshore and for the onshore, are similarly structured. And each include a quick guide for initial response. The idea here is to provide in essence, a two-page guide that can be laminated and used to broadly throughout the country to indicate what the first steps need to be in terms of response, and that is to ensure safety, control the source, and make proper notifications above all else. The two plans, the offshore plan, is not just a marine plan, but it is also the plan for navigable waters. So importantly, it includes both Lake Turkana up in the north, the area around which a lot of the new oil production is located, and also Lake Victoria in the southeast corner. So it includes the marine waters, but also these navigable water bodies. The onshore plan, of course, is the remaining portion and includes the non-navigable waters. Importantly, both of these plans are set within context of a regional and local planning documents. So at a national level, the disaster management plan really sets the framework for all emergency response. And the Marine and Navigable Waters National Contingency Plan fits within context of that disaster management plan. The Kenya Marine Navigable Water Plan, in turn, is related to the West Indian Ocean Regional Plan and to the Lake Victoria Basin Oil Spill Contingency Plans, both of which are only in draft mode and have been that way for some time. Plans that will need to fit within context of the marine and navigable waters are the port plans, such as the Kenya Port Authority's plans, vessel SOPEPs, and of course, any oil or terminals that are handling hazardous and noxious substances. If we look at the onshore plan, it has a similar construct. It fits within the National Disaster Management Plan, and then in turn, country ERPs and oil spill response plans need to fit within context of that onshore national contingency plan. Likewise, industry or government-run rail transport pipelines or facilities need to fit within context of those county plans and the national onshore plan. Of course, each of these plans importantly identifies what the spill notification process is to ports and port authorities when any spills happen in those jurisdictions. And then for the navigable waters, including offshore, it is the Kenya Maritime Authority. For onshore, same way, if it happens within ports and port facilities to land, that goes to the port itself. Otherwise, it goes to the National Environment Management Authority. And then the call outs from there ensue. Now, one of the things that we had to undertake as part of this process was to understand what the risks were. And for that, we based our analysis on work that had been done by Mombasa Harbor Master and by the Oil Spill Mutual Aid Group Society, maintaining records of spills that happened not in a consistent basis, but through the years, identifying most spills, of course, happening in ports. Part of that is who's keeping the records, and in the approaches to the port of Mombasa. Importantly, onshore spills, although there are some records of those instances, are not kept on a rigorous basis. The hazard identification process is important then in recognizing and preparing for spill response. And there is guidance in the appendices of the national plans to provide a mechanism for industry to undertake that analysis for their own purposes and plans. Part of the hazard analysis was also to look at what the potential outcomes of a release could be. And so stochastic modeling was done, particularly looking at offshore potential spill scenarios. But importantly, I think here is that any spill of significance in the Mombasa area is likely to encompass a bilateral response with Tanzania. And in the north, should a spill happen from Lamu, the proposed export terminal for the crude oil, would likely involve a bilateral response with Somalia. Of course, as incident management structure is important, and the management structure adopted in both plans follows the ICS process, which is defined also in the National Disaster Plan. But importantly, government, industry, and other stakeholders can identify those expected to play key roles in a major spill response. Industry, KPA and oil companies maintain a spill base in Mombasa that is largely maintained by the Oil Spill Mutual Aid Group. They do inspections, and they also run training and exercises. So they have a very good and solid program within the port and for local nearshore primarily response. Multi-year training and exercise requirements are also identified in the national plans and will be required for response organizations in Kenya, as well as for industry. And so importantly, this lays a framework that all the potential parties will have to adhere to. The SCAT guidance manual provides a quick reference guide to establishing a shoreline response program. So SCAT field observers and overall process on how to manage that. The guidance manual also provides industry and government with clear approaches and procedures and expectations for managing shoreline treatment operations, both in coastal areas as well as on onshore areas. Implementing best practices is also important in terms of the development of the Kenya Oil Wildlife Response and Preparedness Guidance Manual. This manual is intended to assist the responsible parties and the lead agency, the Kenya Wildlife Services, and other stakeholders during response operations and in development of their own wildlife response plans. Recommendations in multiple areas of response preparedness and continuing development are presented in context of short-term, say within a year, medium-term, so 1 to 2 years, and long-term actions. Many of these actions are internal to Kenya, but others are very important in context of improving the regional response capability and ensuring that potential offers of assistance and trans-border movement of equipment and personnel can be accomplished smoothly. So there's reports and the workshops. Workshops of validation, capacity building workshops are the final steps in this process. So the project identified 2 lead agencies in Kenya based on existing jurisdictional authority and responsibilities: the Kenya Maritime Authority for the marine and navigable waters, and the National Environment Management Authority for those incidents that might occur onshore into non-navigable waters. Both agencies will have to learn and practice their new responsibilities. And exercise is going to be fundamental in ensuring that people get the training they need, as well as putting to practice the plans and the guidance documents that are now available to them. Thank you for your attention. And should you have any questions, please do not hesitate to reach out to myself or any of my co-authors. Thank you very much.